Part 1, expanded to approximately 700 words. The storm rolled across the plains like a wounded animal, loud, restless, unpredictable. Wind whipped through the tall grass, bending it flat against the earth as if the land itself were bowing to the fury of the sky. Jed Lawson urged his horse forward, his coat flapping violently behind him, rain stinging his face like 1,000 needles. Most folks had enough sense to head indoors before a storm like this hit. But Jed wasn't. Most folks, not anymore. Not since grief carved a quiet life out of him. His ranch was 2 hours behind him. The lanterns on his porch would be flickering in the wind by now. Inside, silence. Always silence. The house had been built for family, but time had left Jed the only heartbeat inside those walls. He came into town once every week or two for supplies, flour, beans, salt, tobacco, and to remind himself humanity still existed. But on the ride back tonight, when lightning cracked and thunder bellowed, he heard something he didn't expect. It wasn't the cry of a coyote or the groan of an old tree. It was human, sharp, frightened, a sound that didn't belong in this storm. Jed pulled his horse to a stop, listening. The wind made it hard to place direction, but there it was again, a choked sob, the kind that comes only when a person's spirit is scraped raw. "Easy, boy," he murmured to his horse as he dismounted. He tied the reins to a low branch of an oak that trembled with the wind. Following the sound, Jed trudged through mud that swallowed his boots nearly to the ankle. The lightning provided brief flashes of vision, white bursts against a curtain of black. And in one of those flashes, he saw her. A woman sat slumped beside the exposed roots of an old cottonwood tree, dress torn, hair matted with rain and dirt. She flinched violently when the next lightning bolt lit the sky, as if the world itself were swinging at her. "Ma'am," Jed called out, careful to keep his voice low and steady, the way he spoke to spooked horses. She recoiled, pulling her knees tight to her chest, trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. For a moment Jed felt a heavy ache in his chest. No one curled into themselves like that unless they'd been hurt bad and often. He removed his hat and approached slowly, keeping both hands visible. "I ain't here to cause trouble," he said softly. "Just wanna check if you're hurt." The woman lifted her head just enough for him to see the bruises, purple swelling around one eye, a cut on her lip, fingerprints darkening her arms. These wounds weren't from the storm. These were the kind a man left behind. "Please," she whispered, her voice a thread lost in the thunder. "Don't make me go back." Jed felt something deep and harsh twist inside him. Whoever had done this hadn't held back. They'd meant to break her. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. "What's your name?" "Lena." Her voice cracked on the syllables, as if speaking hurt more than the bruises. "My name's Jed Lawson," he said gently. "You're safe for the moment." She gave a bitter laugh, short and wounded. "Safe doesn't last long." Jed studied her for a moment, the storm drumming around them. He didn't know her story yet, but he didn't need details to recognize one thing. This woman needed help, and there wasn't another soul for miles willing to give it. "What happened?" he asked, not prying, just offering a place for her pain to land. Lena squeezed her eyes shut. "He said I shamed him. 3 girls, no sons." Her voice trembled. "Said it was my fault. Called me cursed." Jed drew in a slow breath. He'd known men like that. Men who treated women as nothing but property, who blamed them for every hardship, every disappointment. Men who used their fists when their pride felt bruised. He reached out his hand, not touching her, just offering it. "Lena, you don't deserve that." "Not a bit." Rain hammered down harder, the cold sinking through their clothes. She shivered violently, and Jed knew she wouldn't survive long out here. "Listen to me," he said firmly but gently. "You're coming with me." Her eyes widened. "I don't even know you." "That's all right," he said. "You don't need to know me to know this. I ain't leaving you out here to die, and I sure as hell ain't sending you back to whoever put those marks on you." Part 2, expanded to approximately 700 words. The Lawson Ranch sat quiet under the silver breath of dawn, the storm clouds pulled apart by early sunlight. When Lena opened her eyes, she wasn't in the mud beneath a tree or on the cold floor of a wagon shed. She was in a real bed, wrapped in a quilt hand-stitched with care. The room smelled faintly of pine and fresh bread, and for a few long moments she simply lay there, afraid to move, afraid to discover she was dreaming. She sat up slowly. Her body protested with aches and bruises, but the silence around her was soft, not threatening. When she finally slipped from under the blanket, her bare feet touched a smooth wooden floor instead of dirt. A small dresser stood by the wall, a wash basin beside it, and a window overlooked a wide stretch of land glowing gold in the morning sun. It was more than a room, it was a world without shouting. Still, fear clung to her like a second skin. She rubbed her arms, remembering fingers that had left purple marks there. She half expected the door to burst open, a voice roaring her name. Her breath quickened, until she heard something gentle instead, the clink of tools, the steady rhythm of wood being hammered. Determined not to hide, Lena stepped outside. Jed Lawson was fixing a fence post near the barn, sleeves rolled up, hat tilted low to block the light. When he heard her footsteps, he stopped and turned. His expression softened, not pity, not shock, just simple kindness. As if she were a person he genuinely wanted to see standing on his land. "Morning," he said in that even tone of his. "There's coffee on the stove. Bacon too, if you're hungry." Lena didn't know what to do with such gentle words. Violence had taught her to expect orders, to brace herself for blame. Kindness confused her. It didn't make sense yet. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice thin. "Take your time," he replied, going back to his work without watching her too closely. Jed understood fear. Not her kind, maybe, but he knew the fragile state a soul could be in when life had taken too much. Inside the house, breakfast sat waiting just as he'd said, warm, steaming, and offered without condition. Lena ate slowly, every bite reminding her how long she'd gone without real food. The days that followed unfolded quietly, something she wasn't used to. Jed didn't pry into her past. He didn't ask what she planned to do. He didn't demand gratitude. Instead, he gave her space, real, breathing space, to exist without fear. He taught her about the horses first. Animals didn't frighten her. In fact, they responded to her with surprising trust. She had soft hands and a calm voice, traits no one had valued before. "Here," Jed said one morning, handing her a brush. "A horse can feel a person's heart through their touch. Yours is steady." Lena hesitated, unsure if she believed that. But when she brushed the mare's mane, the horse leaned into her, eyes half closed. Something inside Lena loosened. Later, she helped mix the grain, learning how to measure feed and clean stalls. The work was tiring but good, honest, and with each passing day, she found her shoulders lowering, her steps growing steadier. "You learn fast," Jed said as they worked side by side repairing a gate. Lena smiled, a small, uncertain smile that felt strange on her face. "Maybe because no one ever let me learn anything before." Jed paused, leaning on the gate. "People like to think they own others," he said quietly. "Truth is, they don't even own themselves." She studied him for a moment. He spoke simply, but his words carried weight. He was lonely, that much she could feel. But loneliness hadn't turned him bitter. It had made him gentle. Nights were the hardest. Sometimes the nightmares came, memories of shouting, hands gripping her arms, accusations she could never escape. She tried not to wake Jed, but a few times he heard her muffled cries. He never barged in. Instead, he'd sit outside her door until the shaking stopped, speaking softly through the wood, letting her know she wasn't alone. One afternoon, Lena was gathering water from the pump when she saw it. Dust on the horizon, rising in a way she recognized instantly. Riders, 3 of them, moving with purpose. Her blood went cold. She dropped the bucket, the sound echoing across the yard. Jed looked up from the barn, following her gaze. His face changed, not fear, but a grim awareness. Part 3, expanded to approximately 700 words. The dust plume grew larger, swallowing the horizon as the riders approached. Lena clutched the doorframe, her breath hitching in her throat. Jed didn't look back at her. He simply stepped forward, planting himself between her and the approaching threat like a wall built from muscle, stubbornness, and something deeper, a sense of right he hadn't felt in years. Mark Burrow arrived first, reining in his horse with a harsh yank. His boots hit the dirt with a thud, spurs jangling like warning bells. His face was twisted with the kind of rage that comes from entitlement, the kind that believed a man owned the people in his life the way he owned cattle. Behind him stopped his 2 hired hands, men Lena recognized, though their faces were masks of unease now. They had followed Burrow many times before, but none of them had ever marched onto a ranch where the owner stood waiting, armed with principle and a revolver. Burrow spat in the dirt. "Lawson," he snarled, "you've got something that belongs to me." Jed didn't flinch. "Ain't nothing here that's yours." Burrow's face went red with fury, veins pulsing at his neck. "She's my wife. She took my horse, my wagon, and my family name. And you're harboring her." Jed's eyes narrowed. Family name don't give you the right to leave her half dead in a storm. Burrow stepped forward, jabbing a finger in Jed's direction. You got no idea what she's done. She gave me 3 useless daughters. 3. His voice cracked like a whip. How's a man supposed to raise a line with that? Lena winced. Even now, the words bit into her, sharp as the fists that had followed them. But Jed didn't give Burrow the satisfaction of seeing her pain. You lay a hand on her because of that. His voice stayed low, too calm. A dangerous calm. Girls or boys, ain't none of that on her. Burrow's eyes darted past Jed. He spotted Lena in the doorway and pointed at her like she was a runaway animal. You get outside right now, woman. We're going home. Lena's knees buckled. The sound of his voice brought back every bruise, every night she'd been cornered, every cry she'd swallowed. But this time Jed spoke before she made a sound. She ain't going nowhere with you. Burrow froze. Then he laughed. A loud, ugly sound. You think you can keep her? You think I'm just gonna let you? Jed didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I ain't keeping her. She's staying because she wants to. Burrow's hand twitched toward his hip. Jed's revolver appeared in his hand with lightning speed, barrel angled toward the ground, but ready. The hired hand stiffened, unsure whether to reach for their own guns or back away. You draw, Jed said quietly, and I put you in the dirt. I ain't repeating myself. Burrow stared at him, hate burning through the rain-washed dust on his face. She's my property. That word, property, hit the air like poison. Inside the doorway, Lena felt rage rising through her fear, fueled by every moment she had suffered, every cry she'd smothered, every hope she'd thought impossible. No, she said, stepping out despite her trembling. I'm not. Burrow whipped his head toward her, fury exploding in his expression, but Lena stood straighter, even though her legs shook. I'm not your property. I'm not cursed. I'm not to blame for the children you didn't want. Her shoulders rose with a shaky breath. I'm done being afraid of you. Jed didn't take his eyes off Burrow, but pride flickered across his face at the sound of her voice. Burrow snarled and made one final move toward her, small, but enough. Jed took a single step forward, blocking him entirely from Lena's view. He didn't raise his gun, but the message was clear. This line would not be crossed. You're gonna get on your horse, Jed said, slow and steady, and you're gonna ride off this land. Because if you don't, if you take one more step toward that woman, you won't walk away. The hired hands shifted nervously. One of them tugged at Burrow's sleeve. Mark, let it be. Ain't worth it. For a long, tense moment, the only sound was the wind rustling through the dry grass. Then Burrow spat on the ground again, hatred burning in his eyes. This ain't over, he growled. Jed finally looked him in the eye fully. For her, it is. Burrow hesitated, then mounted his horse with a furious jerk. He rode off, dust swirling behind him. His men followed, relief written across their faces. Silence returned, broken only by Lena's shuddering breath. Jed holstered his revolver and turned to her, removing his hat in a gesture both gentle and respectful. You all right? He asked softly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, not out of fear, but release. Yes, because you didn't.